Okay, so we're going to look at for loops. A for loop is a Python statement that allows code to be executed a fixed number of times. So we use it to iterate over sequences, lists, or a set of numbers. And its structure looks a little bit like this. So we start the for statement. It comes in and says, have I reached the last item in my sequence? If no, it executes the body of the for loop. Comes back again. Have I reached the last item? If no, executes the body of the for loop and continues at that until it's reached the last item. And then when it hits it yes, it exits the loop. So it looks a little bit like this. So for whatever my range is, and these are all my statements after the colon. So these are the statements that are executing my for, or my body of my for. So for, I haven't reached my last item, execute these statements. For, have I not reached my last item, execute the statements. For, I've reached my last item, exit the for statement and come to the next statement. So let's just look at how we might use those. Okay, so this first one here, the first one here, if I want to execute through a sort of sequence of numbers. So I've got 4x in range, and the range is starting at 0 and going to 3. Okay, so this will print hello world for me a number of times based on the range here. So range is a built-in function which returns a sequence which meets the requirement for which for needs to run. So 4x is in range 0 to 3, print hello world 3 times. Okay, I can iterate over a string with a for loop. So here's my string, just hello world, and 4x in string, print x. So it'll come to the string, pull off the first element in the string, the first letter, which is h, it'll print h. It'll then increment x and print the next letter and the next letter and so on until it gets to the end, and then there's no more x left in string. It exits that loop. Notice here that this is different to the while loop. I don't need to set any or change any condition. I don't need to increment a counter. It'll automatically increment the counter as it goes through the range. Okay, so this is the other programming languages do require you to increment the index counter, whatever that might be. Okay. And look at another one here. Here I've given it a list of values, these prime numbers. And I'm printing those primes. So doing for prime in primes, which is this is my list, print prime. So for each element in prime, print that. Okay, so let's look at some code work. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the first one here. And the first one is to print the numbers of the loop. So that code executes this here. Okay, so I have given it a list of numbers, of integers, 1 through to 8. And I've simply said for num in numbers, print num. Look, notice I don't have to declare num. It just uses num as an index to go through numbers and picks them one at a time, going through the numbers list, and then printing those nums, and then I'm out of the loop. We'll look at the next loop, and this one here. And in this one, I'm actually adding, I'm getting this result here. So I'm adding up the numbers in the loop. So print a blank line, print a heading. Okay, so I've got the same numbers list. I've declared a variable answer, which I've set to 0. And then for num in numbers, answer becomes equal to answer plus num. So I'm adding I'm adding all the numbers together. So I'm adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 and so on, and it prints the sum is answer, and then I'm out of the loop. Okay. Now it may be that I want to use the index. So in these, I didn't need to use the index. I don't care what the index is. I just simply print the next value in the sequence. So print, I just happen to call it num. I could print it. I could call it X, I could call it I, call it whatever I want. So I'm printing the next number, and this works. So for num in nums, for student in students, etc. If I want to use the index position, or use the index number, I have to refer to the index number. So here's a simple one. For I in range 0 to 5, print I. So I need to know what the value of I is, and I print it over here. So it starts at 0, and so it starts at 0 and gives me 5 up to 5 digits. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is 5 numbers. And I'm printing I each time. So I can see my index incrementing as I'm going through that range. Okay. Now see the difference between that one? I had to give the range of 0 to 5. Whereas in the previous one, I simply had to give it the list, because the list is already a sequence, whereas range converts these numbers into a sequence in which I can iterate over. Okay, let's look at the next one down here. Here again, I'm using I. So I've got my students list. Now here I've taken the length of the list and put it into a variable called number of students. So it's calculated that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students, and it's put in here. And here I've got for I in the range 0 to number of students, which stores 5. So it's the same as doing that. Okay, but here, let's say I don't know the length of my list. I'd have to sort of use the length list like I've done here. And then I'm printing students I. So I'm referring to the I position of students. I'm printing that out. And you can see here, there's my list printed off. Okay, again here, I'm iterating through a list. I've got my favourite bands listed in here. So I'm showing my age. I've got Hothouse Flowers, Elvis, Bob Dylan. Here I'm starting I at 0. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I have done here. So here I'm doing print for I in the range length of list. So for I in up to whatever the length of the list is. So the length of the list will be 3. So for I in 3, print I love the band I. So don't forget the first position in a list is always 0, 1, 2. So for I between sort of 0 and 3, which is 3 integers, so which is 0, 1, 2, it'll print those off, and you can see here is concatenated then I love and my band name. So I love band I, which is Hothouse Flowers. The next for loop, I increments to the next element, which is Elvis. So I love Elvis, I love Bob Dylan, etc., etc. Okay, and my final one, again, it's a similar sort of thing. Here I'm using I not just to refer to the index position, but I'm using I as a printout. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just printed off the first 4 American presidents. So I've got my presidents stuck in a list, and I've got for I in the range length of presidents. So add up, we'll calculate the number of presidents there are on the list and use that as a range value. And then I'm printing I plus 1. I plus 1, because don't forget we always start, the I is always at 0. So I plus 1, so that's just to give me a nice 1 here at the front. So 1, and then the president's, whatever president name is at position I, which is Washington. And then the next time it will come, I will be equal to 1. So I plus 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. What's the president at position 1 is Adams. So I've got 2 Adams, and so on.